Where are we going?
To the day it all began and ended. The moment that changed everything.
Welcome to McDonald's. Can I take your order?
Yeah, I'd like to get a 10-piece McNugget and a bunch of the Szechuan sauce. Like, as much as you're allowed to give me. In 1998, they had this promotion for the Disney film Mulan, where they created a new sauce for the McNuggets called Szechuan sauce. And it's delicious. And then they got rid of it, and now it's gone. This is the only place we're going to be able to try it. It's in my memory.
Rick, you're doing this bit while your brain is melting.
Okay, all right.
No, I was like writing it on my kitchen table and like going down to Alabama and staying in a Best Western behind Waffle House. No,
Yeah.
did not think people would hear
In
it.
case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. Have you ever seen me without this stupid hat on? That's weird.
HomestarRunner.com, welcome. Take one.
Welcome to Homestar10.net. It's .com. Oh, right. Homestar10.net. It's .com.
Going to my friend Charlotte's house tonight. Well, first we're going to Asian grocery store, and then we're going to her house, and we're going to try and make, like, dumplings.
Yay.
Don't know what kind, don't know with what, but just dumpling party.
Fun. That'll be cool.
So, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I've started doing it was a thing that I sort of realized I was doing, and then I decided to formalize it, if only to make it seem like my weekends aren't total wastes of time, where on Sundays I try out a new recipe that I find, and then make it, take a picture of it, and put it on Tumblr. And so today I made homemade pretzels, and they turned out really well.
Wow, that's awesome. Good for you. There's a bee in my room.
Oh, that's not fun.
I'm sleepy. Have you done anything interesting this weekend?
Have I done anything interesting this weekend? Do I do anything interesting any weekends?
You made pretzels.
I made pretzels. I'm genuinely trying to remember what I did yesterday. I have been rewatching the first season of Riverdale, and we just got to the second to last episode of the first season. Just as good as it was the first time around. The greatest show. You watch Riverdale?
No. I have seen, like, the first episode, and then I forgot to, like, keep watching it.
So you know what it's about then. You've gotten the general gist of Twin Peaks by way of Archie.
Yes.
And the shenanigans that unfold therein. Yeah. Oh, gosh. What a television program. I do have to say, on rewatching the show, I really appreciate how in the first couple episodes they do a really good job of, like, here are these archetypal characters that you know and that you think you understand, and we're going to try and play them into their original vision a lot for the first couple episodes, and spend those first few hours slowly chipping away and revealing that, oh, behind perfect preppy teen Betty is this girl who's, like, stressed out of her mind and grinds her fingernails into her palms until they bleed in order to, like, not show any sign of weakness, and it's secretly kind of crazy. And how, oh, Veronica is actually, like, very nice and sweet, but puts on this sort of bitchy outer shell that she retreats into, etc., etc. It's a good show.
Yeah. I've recently gotten into a kind of trashy TV show, but it's also highly entertaining.
Lay it on me.
Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce.
The name sounds familiar, but I don't really know anything about it.
There's, like, some fairly big names in it. The actress who plays Dr. Cuddy on House, I can't think of her.
Lisa something or other.
Yes. She's the main character in it. And
Edelstein. Lisa Edelstein.
Very
I
good.
think.
Yeah. So she's the main character, and Retta, who is in Parks and Rec, is on it. She comes in the second season, I think. She's on it from the beginning. I don't know. The premise is just, like, there's this woman who's, like, late 30s, early 40s, and has been a long time, like, childhood book author, or not author of kids' books, but author about, like, parenting and, being pregnant and like those types of things. Like she's written this whole series of like Girlfriend's Guide to Pregnancy, Girlfriend's Guide to Marriage, Girlfriend's Guide to
So wait, so
fill
then
in the
is
blank.
Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, like simultaneously it's about her going through her divorce, but also it's like a callback to the name of the books that she writes, and then it
Yes.
ties into her whole thing about being like she's a successful author, but her personal life isn't very great, and like how is
Exactly.
she? That's my shit. I love it.
Yeah. So yes, her personal life is falling apart, and she's kind of like trying to play this character that she's created of herself, while also like, I don't know, like, because she's trying to spin it as like the sexy, happy face of divorce while,
Yeah.
falling apart, and having a series of friends' lives who are also falling apart.
I love it.
While also being like some entertaining satire of like rich white women in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
like thinking they have problems. So yes, it's pretty entertaining, very watchable. Yeah, just enjoyable if you need like a kind of bingey, silly show.
Okay. I will keep that. I'll keep that on the back burner. Because Wynonna Earp just ended its second season, so I've got some extra room in the schedule.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, it's delightful. It's pretty entertaining.
Have I ranted to you about Wynonna Earp and why it's an amazing TV show and that everyone should watch it?
I feel like briefly you have mentioned that it's a very good show and everyone should watch it, but I
Okay.
feel like there's room for a fully expanded rant.
So, by and large, I don't know if the Netflix like recommended for you percentages things are always on the money.
Mhm.
That being said, Wynonna Earp showed up as a recommended for you 5 months ago or so, and it hit the nail on the head. So it is a sci-fi, as in SYFI, original series,
Mhm.
based on a weird comic that I've never read and probably never will, with this sort of crazy, way too complicated premise of Wyatt Earp from the gunfight at OK Corral ended up having all of his descendants cursed, and so the main character is the heir to Wyatt Earp, whose name is she's a girl named Wynonna, and she is cursed to have to kill the constantly respawning demons who are all the people that Wyatt Earp killed over his law fighting career. And Wynonna's a horrific, constantly drunk fuck up that comes back into town and has to clean up, fight against all these demons that are trying to kill her with her magic gun, and with Doc Holliday, who's immortal and who she falls in love with, and with a secret sort of X-Files-y cop, and with her sister, who is a total badass nerd, and the hot cop who her sister hooks up with, and it's an amazing. It's that. So it's made by the same person who did the show Lost Girl, which I've watched a little bit of since watching Wynonna Earp, but I think hits that sort of middle ground between, yes, it's a dumb, over-the-top genre show, and it knows that it is, and it knows that dumb, over-the-top genre shows are fun and cool, and like it doesn't have to try and pretend that it's not, or be like a postmodern take on a dumb genre show. But at the same time, like, it's a low budget show, but it's made by people who do actually care about telling sort of real stories, even within the confines of crazy horror Western shenanigans. And so you have, some really interesting female characters who all interact in interesting ways and then fight demons. And it's great. And it's in a nebulous Western town that may be in Canada, because the show's made in Canada and all everyone in it is Canadian, but who knows? It's really good.
That sounds delightful. I will definitely add it to my list. I feel like I might reach a point with the Girlfriend's Guide show that I'm gonna like be like, I can't handle these characters anymore. Like I binged quickly, so I'm gonna need to like break it up with something else.
The first season is very good. The second season just ended, and it got a little messy and muddled. I think the two main villains in the first season are awesome, and none of the villains in the second season are nearly as cool as the ones from season one. It also just sort of got a little messier of like, oh, we're following one plot line for the first half and then a different plot line for the second, and it also, I think, here's an interesting thought. What I guess this could lead into like ideas about creator fan dynamics and stuff like that, but there definitely I got the sense, and there were moments of like, okay, this is a cult TV show that is on a middling network, but found a huge audience online that, or not huge, but a dedicated audience online that like, yeah, it's people that would love this very, you know, LGBT friendly and very like pro-feminist and female created show about fighting demons in like a demon fighting Western. And so like, yeah, it would grab an online audience that would be interested in it. And I think there's an element of like, I think it did it better than a lot of other shows, but like writing towards the fans, if that makes sense. By and large, it was only, in the case of the season, it was only a few moments of like, oh, they're going to sneak in a sly reference to the ship name of of these two characters and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't something like they're, you know, drastically shifting a plot line to follow what the fans want. But I don't know. What do you think about the ways that like creators and fans interact, especially at like different levels of artistry versus like genuine internet artists as opposed to people that are making real TV shows for real companies, et cetera, et cetera?
Man, okay. So many thoughts happening. That's like quite the question.
I know. I guess I can sort of kick it off as being, I'm someone who is pretty steadfast in my personal desire for creator fan dynamics to be one way, and that being going from the creator, giving stuff to the fans, and not really much of anything coming the other direction is kind of what I would want, both as a creator of things whenever I do create things, and as a fan. I don't really want the person who is making the thing I like to take my opinions into their work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you mean like you don't want fan theories to become canon, like.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think
because the creator's looking for that or something.
Yeah, and even frankly at like a more simple level of, I kind of like the idea of things being one way, even if it's not influencing the way the work is, of like, creators are over there, fans are over here, creators create things for the fans, and then fans kind of do their own thing.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you on that. I feel like there's like a danger when those lines get too muddled, and I think like just the creator creating their thing is great, and then fans taking it and doing like all of the own fandom and creativity, and I think like that being allowed to exist is really important, but I also think it's like loses the authenticity when there's like too much back and forth, and when it's not just like fans expressing something they don't see in the show through art or fanfic or whatever that is. And I think there's something really genuine about that gets lost if there's too much of like a back and forth between fans and creators.
Yeah, and I suppose there is room for there to be a bit of a back and forth, but I guess in my idealized version, I'm seeing it as like a back and forth of one-way relationships of, you have a creator who creates a thing, and then there are fans who are a fan of that thing, but there's nothing to say that creator themselves may not be in one-way creator-fan relationships with other creators, some of whom may actually be in that camp of people who are fans of their thing, and you have a big web of one-way stuff.
Yeah. I feel like that's a lot easier to think about or to visualize when you've got something like a traditional television program, you know, versus like YouTube audiences or more online based, like more new media based fan creator relationships, because that's just all sorts of levels of blurry and complicated.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And do you think you run into a bit of a danger when there is a misunderstanding of what the work that goes into a particular type of thing, especially when it's on the level of like a, you know, professional old media type work? I know, interestingly enough, someone who sort of came up through the ranks of online media, Rachel Kiley, I think is her name, who worked on a bunch of like web series and stuff like that. Lizzie Bennet Diaries, I think.
Lizzie Bennet Diaries, yeah.
I know she's written a bunch of stuff talking about like the whole, especially when there was the whole thing with The 100, I think, was the show that sort of sparked the most recent big online backlash for them killing off. I don't watch the show, so I don't know the details, but either one of or both of two gay characters that were in a relationship, and sort of big online backlash sparking to that. And I know that Rachel Kiley, would write a lot about like, hey, there are, valid critiques to be made about, XYZ, but there's a difference between sort of having a valid critique of a thing that happens versus trying to critique in a way that suggests that you understand the process, when it's pretty clear that you don't understand how, like, it's a writer's room of these many people that have a head writer that are working with a network, and that network is, has financial interests, and that all of this is being done months in advance in order so that it can be ready to shoot and then ready to be edited and then be post-produced, and these writers are working on other things while this stuff is going on, and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I don't know. I do wonder, and maybe this is a bigger question, how much of my personal vibe with it comes from me not necessarily being as pro, like, being a part of internet communities with a capital I, capital C. I think for me, I have internet friends, namely the person I'm talking to on the internet right now, that we've hung out twice in our 4 years of knowing each other.
Yes, that's true.
I don't think of myself as being a part of an internet community really ever. I think of myself as like having individual relationships with people, whether those individual relationships are facilitated through the internet, through real life connection, through going to school with them, through whatever. But like, if I'm in a chat room or something like that, I'm probably the lurker who doesn't actually communicate as often, or I don't participate in any like Tumblr fandom tags and blah, 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 blah. And so maybe that's easier for me as someone who is outside of that system already and prefers to have sort of individual close relationships, regardless of whether they're internet or not. And then, I guess not being a part of any of these fan communities that sort of have their own separate power as a group.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting to consider like the type of internet communities that we first encountered and experienced and created, like, 10 years ago. Oh my God. Upon, kind of, I don't know, at least for me, I feel like this like growth of internet communities really began 10 years ago. At least like at the rate we're seeing them. So now being able to like look back on that, and like not judge in a bad way, but like from outside of the system, look at internet communities now and like, is there a value judgment there? Is it just different? I find myself feeling like I dislike, I'm like, fandom now is stupid and they used to be so cool and blah, blah, blah. But I'm trying to like be nicer in a sense, or like, I don't know, just recognize it's because something is different doesn't mean it's necessarily bad.
So let's take a step back. I get the sense that you participated a lot more in sort of what could be traditionally considered an internet community, capital I, capital C, than I ever did going back. Do you sort of have I don't know, from your perspective, is there like a Rachel story of being on the internet and being part of Harry Potter communities or YouTube communities or whatever, fanfic communities, etc.?
Definitely. And I do feel like I was very involved, or at least like very present, and like, reading message boards and all of that, but I was never like a super active in actually posting things on such message boards or YouTube videos or things like that. But I did kind of make it part of my identity to like be involved in these things and like follow the news and all of that. Well, let's see. I'm pretty sure like I was always really into Harry Potter, just at books as a kid growing up. I know that I feel like in my brain, all of this stems from me reading a John Green book that I'm sure my grandma got it for me. She was like, this is popular. Someone at the bookstore recommended to me. I don't know. And then me Googling John Green, being really into his blog that he was very, like, he had a regular blog in like 2006, 2007, reading the blog. At that point, I think John Green was living in New York and had this like group of like friends he would meet up with once a week who were all writers who all lived in New York, and they would all like, you know, just get together to like work on stuff.
Mhm.
So I decided to just like, I was like, I want to read more books. So I just started reading every book written by anyone else who is in this like little like New York YA writers guild. So that was like, and around this time, there was also like, you know, Brotherhood 2.0 happening, and John was posting like maybe half of the Brotherhood 2.0 videos on his blog. So whenever he posted one, I would watch it.
Okay.
And it took me many months to like realize that there was a YouTube page with all of the videos. And so I was just watching like a weirdly edited selection of the videos that he did post on his blog.
Huh.
And I feel like probably like end of 2007, I actually like, I don't know, discovered YouTube
Mhm.
and realized there was like, you know, daily vlogs or something, you know, of this Brotherhood 2.0 project. And that's when I kind of like spiraled into being really into that. And around the same time, I feel like I had discovered MuggleNet, or maybe John Green mentioned it in his blog, and like Leaky Cauldron. So then I like kind of simultaneously spiraled into like YouTube community and like Harry Potter message boards and all of this. But I think it's all kind of interrelated in a sense that I like found it all through similar.
Sure.
But like, yeah, I don't know. And I always felt so involved in it, even though I feel like I wasn't posting things and people probably don't like know me as like a username or a name, but it was like part of my routine, and like, you know, I felt very up to date in what was going on and things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, because my experience is entirely different from that. I think mine has always been much more. One, I think I was a lot less, you know, I obviously knew YouTube existed from 2007 onward because everyone knew about YouTube. And in fact, fun fact, the first ever and far and away most successful YouTube video I've ever posted was one that my brother and I put up in 2007. That has, last I checked, I think 2 years ago, it had like 40 or 50,000 views. That's a little stop motion Star Wars video that we put up for I think it was my brother's a class project or something like that. And it's still up there, still blocked in most countries because it used the Star Wars music illegally because 2007, lol. But no, I think for me it was a lot more of, it never sort of metastasized makes it sound bad, but like metastasize in the pure version of like growing and spreading and blah blah blah. Never really grew out into interconnected communities as much as it was a lot of one-off content funnels.
Okay.
Of like, so I was big into Homestar Runner videos, and I was big into oh gosh, I'm trying to even remember, but there were a few other things like that, but it was always from the point of view of either this is a thing that I exclusively watch by myself and don't really talk about to anyone else, or I watch and my friends also watch. So like the Potter Puppet Pals videos, or later on in high school, like Garfunkel and Oates videos and other sort of comedy things of that ilk. It would either be I find it and I like it and never tell anyone about it, or I find it, I like it, I go through a little phase of this, realize my other friends have also been doing the same thing, but we only have interactions in real life when we're sitting around the lunch table or working on homework or going to a friend's house, or then later on Facebook where it's only you and your actual immediate friends from high school, because I got my Facebook first in freshman year of high school, I think. And didn't really switch to stuff like Twitter, Tumblr that reached beyond my walled garden of internet social networking until end of high school, college, really.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. That is a different.
But yeah, sort of my one only like breakout into wider world of the internet is when I start, because like I did a YouTube show with a friend of mine at the end of high school, but the only people that ever watched that were our friends. It never broke out into anything bigger. And then I start watching Jonathan Green videos. I watch Hank Green's like hour and a half long, here's how to vlog using our style video. Decide, cool, I'm going to learn how to do that. Start making videos. 2 weeks into starting making videos, submit a video for LeakyCon Harry Potter conference for anyone that's listening along.
I don't think I realized that was the time frame.
Managed to get into it, go to it, and that's how I meet you. That's how I meet Hannah. That's how I meet Kirsten. Don't really become friends with you that weekend because I'm mostly just hanging out with another friend of mine who went. Become friends over Twitter and Facebook months later, and then. But even then, it was like I'm becoming friends with actual specific individual people, and that spreads out into then being friends with other people that are friends of your guys's. But never really being like part of a community of any of these sort of fan things. More being a part of a community of people who are all friends with each other. And even I'm not as big of a Harry Potter fan as any of y'all, so like there's that sort of tertiary element to it as well.
That is super interesting. Yeah. Like I say that I was like involved in these fandoms online, but I wasn't really posting things, but then I did have a much bigger community of people, like all of my friends in like middle and high school, where we were like all of our conversations were about talking about the things that were happening in the fandoms online.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting, I don't know. I also feel, at least in terms of Harry Potter, I always felt like I was slightly younger than like the big names in the community, so I always felt like I was like 3 years too young to have been like a big name in the community, at least even with YouTube things too. I always felt like I was slightly too young. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I guess I always base it off of like I think I'm 3 years younger than Kaylee Hyde.
Okay.
And I feel like she was always like, she was the baby of Five Awesome Girls, and she was the baby of like all of that. So in my brain, that means like I was too much of a baby to like be involved.
God, that's another thing that keeps hitting me of thinking like, oh, I don't necessarily know what I want the rest of my life to be, but like one potential avenue I could see is doing some sort of like self-sustaining content creation on the internet. If that's the thing that would work out, cool. And I always am thinking to myself of like, oh, it's too late for me to get into blah, blah, blah. Like that ship has sailed. And now I'm thinking back on it, it's like, all right, obviously if, you know, I made 3 or 4 YouTube videos that I put up in 2007. If I had kept doing that consistently, I'd be a YouTube star, because that's how it works, is that if you were consistent from that first chunk when like 100,000 people were on YouTube on any given day, and then you kept doing it, you get better, you ride the tide. Awesome, cool. That being said, if I also had been consistently doing YouTube stuff from 2013 when I started doing it again, still, there's a chance that like if it was genuinely consistent, it would probably get good and it would probably turn into a thing, if not necessarily a like capital T thing.
Right.
And I don't know. That's always. I've also thought about like, gosh, the first time I ever tried to do a podcast was in 2008 with some friends from high school, and that fizzled. And then tried to do it again in like 2010, and that fizzled. Tried to do it again in 2012, and that fizzled. And at any point in those, especially when it got to like 2012, I'm like, oh, it's too late for podcasts. It's oversaturated. But like, if I had started it in 2012. It would now be a 4-year-old podcast, and all of the not 5-year-old podcasts, and most of the shows I listen to are younger than that. So
yeah, I have a lot of those thoughts too, and it's hard to know, like, you know, would you be a YouTube star if you kept up with your videos in 2008? Like, there's definitely a much like higher likelihood just because of, you know, how many content creators there were at the time. But I do have a lot of that thought of like, I should have just started doing it, and you know, I could be famous now. And I, you know, like, not that I want to be famous, but you know, I feel like be an interesting element of my life if that was like part of my identity, was like internet content creation.
And I mean, that's always the thing of like the reason why the people that like, it is no small thing to say, oh, if only I had kept consistently creating content for like almost 10 years at this point. It's like, yeah, the people who are successful are the ones who are able to do that. Like that takes skill, that takes work, that's a thing. It's not just a like, oh, flip of a coin, either I would have been successful or not. It's like, nah, you would have still had to put in the work and
definitely
make it good. But
yeah, and I feel like at least for me, when I think about doing that, like, what if I had consistently done this? I feel like I still approach it in this like way of just like, I could have been, a content creator instead
Yeah.
of like, and like I guess it's in a sense of like I wouldn't have to put in the work now to do that, and it's harder to do
Sure.
it now. But it still is me being like, I don't want to do that much work at doing this.
Yeah.
Which is exactly why I didn't consistently make videos and didn't enjoy making videos, because that's just not something that I was going to like be into or be good at, or like, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, consistency, man, it's hard.
It's hard.
We say that as I think we're going on a year of trying to do this, and this is like our 4th time ever recording.
Yeah. I feel like that's on me mostly, but
I think I would say the blame is pretty equally shared.
okay.
I think it's a I think it worked out perfectly that my busy senior year, when it was easy for me to throw things off, then gave way to, okay, now I'm an adult, I have a regular schedule, cool, pretty easy, whatever. Now you have your busy senior year where
Right.
it starts to
That's true.
become a thing. And
About
so
2 years. One of us being too busy trying to figure out what's going on to
yeah.
have a regular planned thing. Yeah, that's very true.
Also, I'm willing to throw some blame on myself because historically there are so many projects like this that have fallen apart that I'm like, there's a connecting thread here, namely that it's very easy for me to give up on a project partway through.
Yeah. I was literally, before we started talking, I was listening to an episode of Freakonomics about, because that's who I am, because about this psychologist whose research is entirely in like essentially like grit or stamina, and like measuring kind of like the relationship between success and people who like put a lot of effort into it, and like what types of personality traits make the type of person that is going to like not just be naturally good at something, but put in all of the like 10,000 hours you need to do something. It was a really interesting idea, and part of it was like this little like survey she created that was like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to find something you're interested in and then give up on it and move on to something else you're interested in? Like, I don't know, it was like a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
I was like, man, yes. All of the projects.
4 or 5 on my end. Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
As I organized all of my craft supplies from all of my 27 different craft interests that I've, gone through.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I've just started getting into let's start cooking more because, again, I'm always throwing out old projects and starting new ones. And therefore, none of them will ever get to the point where they're genuinely good.
Yeah. Cooking's been consistent for me, though, as a project.
Yeah.
Though I don't know if I think of it as a project. I just really enjoy cooking. But
yeah, I've gotten a lot worse at it since moving. Paradoxically, because now I live on my own and pretty close to grocery stores, so it should be even easier for me to cook. But I think it was, I moved. I had a week in my new apartment before I was going on vacation for a week and a half. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to go grocery shopping. We're just going to, we'll do takeout and frozen pizza for this week. And then it just got so easy to keep in that zone and never do the full on, like, let's stock everything. And even now, I'm not fully stocked, but what I end up doing is like, oh, I want to try a cool new recipe on Sundays, and then there's more ingredients than are needed in order to make for just one person, because no one ever makes recipes for one person. And so then I'm just like, all right, well, I've got this lying around and slowly building up more and more esoteric things that are needed for just one recipe.
What other things have you made with your weekly cooking?
So what ended up sort of inspiring it a lot is there's this YouTube show that I was watching called Binging with Babish. That is a very, very good YouTube cooking show, and sort of the premise is this guy makes recipes from TV and movies.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh gosh, now I'm just thinking about the fact that like the last time that I used to be really good at cooking when I was little, and a part of that was I watched a shit ton of Food Network whenever I was at my grandparents' house. And And now I'm thinking about it. It's like, oh, now I'm doing a lot of cooking again because I'm watching this show on YouTube and I'm watching BuzzFeed Tasty videos. And like, it's the exact same thing as loving to watch Iron Chef and Good Eats and Rachel Ray, but now on YouTube instead of on TV. Anyway, so I was like, okay, I'm going to try making some of these because why not? So I made, the first one I did was his version, or not his version, he got the recipe off of Reddit, but of doing the Szechuan sauce from McDonald's, but that became popular because it was in an episode of Rick and Morty.
Okay.
I take it you don't watch Rick and Morty? It's a very good show. I would highly recommend it.
Yes.
But this is the style of sort of off-the-wall joke that is a thing on this show. But in it, they go into the memories of Rick, one of the main characters, and in it, he takes a detour to stop at McDonald's in 1993 or something like that to say that, there was a limited time promotion where they were doing this Mulan-inspired Szechuan sauce as a promo for the movie, and this is the only place we're going to be able to taste it, is here in my memories, so we got to stock up. And then it became a big internet thing of like, hey, what does McDonald's Szechuan sauce taste like? I don't know what it actually tastes like, but based on this recipe, pretty good. So I made that. I made lemon pepper wings, chicken wings, inspired by the TV show Atlanta, which itself inspired it by the fact that this is just a food that is very common in the city of Atlanta. Made a modified version of his recipe of the Krabby Patty last week, and now pretzels. But the pretzels were just from BuzzFeed Tasty. Good stuff.
Those all sound like good stuff, and like a big variety of things too, like desserts to more appetizers. Yeah, like kind of all sorts of things. I have just subscribed to Binging with Babish.
It's good stuff. Good stuff.
I'm always into new cooking channels, but I'm kind of like obnoxious when it comes to cooking channels. Like I don't know. I'm very particular about what I'm into.
What are your criteria? Lay it on me.
What are my criteria? I don't like anything that's like really gimmicky or really like channel voice.
Okay. I was
Does that make sense?
In terms of gimmicky, this whole guy's whole steez is let's just make recipes from TV shows and movies. So,
I mean, and that's totally fine. Like, just that's like a theme to me, or like some type of genre. Like, no, I just mean I don't know. I just feel like there's something like inauthentic about like cooking channel voice and like Does that make sense?
Sure.
I don't know. I'm just kind of like, here's a recipe, teach me how to make it. Like, don't try and like be cutesy about it. I guess.
Yeah, I think this hits a similar sort of vibe that like the BuzzFeed Tasty videos do. High production value and focusing on like let's make the food look good and do that. But I think I would say his is a show that is entertainment first, cooking a very close second. But because like you can follow along with the recipes and you can also read the recipes on his website and stuff like that. But yeah, it definitely is a slickly produced, hey, let's make sure that this is a fun thing to watch, regardless of whether you ever intend to make some of these recipes. And in fact, for some of the more insane things like Game of Thrones meat pie or, this weird over-the-top egg recipe from the show Archer, stuff like that like no one is ever going to make in real life. He's doing it sort of for entertainment to show what it would be like if it was real.
I also don't watch so many cooking channels, and I haven't like super actively tried to find more to watch. I watch Food Wishes with Chef John, which is like pretty straightforward. Like, here's how to make a bunch of different things. Makes a lot of dad jokes. Very about it. I refer to Chef John as my personal god on a regular basis. His videos are just really soothing in a way that's like, and like there's also a very good range of like skill level needed in terms of all of his recipes. Like there's definitely things that are very complicated, but definitely things that are more simple. So I think it's nice that like, he's kind of cooking for all skill levels. There are these two brothers who are entertaining to me. Their channel's called like Brothers Green Cooking, I think. They're usually I think it's kind of just their persona, but it seems like they're high a lot of the time.
Oh, okay.
Or at least that's Brothers kind of Green. Like the vibe is like, I think that is actually their last name, but
Go.
I don't know. But they're entertaining. And what I like on their channel is they do like 15-minute cooking videos where they're like, you can make this actually really good, really like nutritious, you know, enjoyable dinner in like 15-20 minutes.
Okay.
That isn't just like put this in the microwave or like put these in the oven. It's like, you know, make a tostada in 20 minutes, like chicken tostadas. So, yeah, they've got a bunch of different types of videos, but they've got some good cooking. Do you watch the channel You Suck at Cooking?
The name sounds familiar, but no.
Because that's not actually like teaching you how to cook. It's just very sassy and
Sure.
very entertaining, and I'm about that channel.
Okay.
But that's about the cooking channels that I watch.
Okay. I did find a cool. I think the channel has more stuff on it, but there's one docu-series that they were doing. Golly, I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head now. Let me look it up. But the it happened when I was also like searching, trying to re-find this recipe for lemon pepper chicken that linked to a 15-minute or so documentary about the lemon pepper wings in Atlanta and how they sort of play into the culture and how they're both a product of the culture and they're a product of the Black culture in Atlanta and also play into and sort of feed back into the Black culture of Atlanta. And let me find it. And it was really interesting because I'm always about that whole like, let's see how things that you wouldn't necessarily think are things like food or things like architecture or things like all these things, how they play into culture and how they play into art.
That's really cool. I am very intrigued.
There's a smarter way to say that, but I was trying to type into Google.
That's okay. I'm very into all of those intersections.
Food Grails is the name of the series, and the video in particular that I found is called How Strip Clubs and Hip Hop Fueled Atlanta's Lemon Pepper Wing Obsession.
Oh, yeah, that is like very what I'm about. I listened to a podcast that's actually a very similar concept idea. It's focused on Southern cuisine and Southern culture specifically, but it's called Gravy, and it looks at like the history and, you know, kind of existence of Southern food as like a huge element of Southern culture, but also explores the stories of a lot of different people who are very influential and very involved in this, but we may not think of it as just like, you know, base level, like what is Southern food culture.
Yeah.
It's like very like NPR type, you know, like produced podcast, but they're very well done. And really interesting stories that I think are important to hear.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Southern culture it's a thing, ain't it? There's always an element of which, like, I am fascinated by and intrigued by and drawn towards Southern culture, but it's definitely like I'm drawn towards elements of it, and, you know, the more I find out about it, the more it sort of intrigues me and I want to carve a place for myself among it. But again, I'm still sort of taking that surface level approach of like, hey, I'm someone who is from Chicago, Seattle, Portland, Boston. Those are the cities that I lived in. California, has never lived in the South, just has, you know, visited a few times. And I definitely has a surface level appreciation of Southern Gothic as an aesthetic, Southern Gothic as a literary form, Southern food, Southern sensibilities and stuff like that, but did not grow up in it, can't lay any actual claim to it, and also, you know, doesn't have the is too distant and too ignorant of it to be able to tease apart the problematic aspects from the interesting good aspects from the parts that like are to be celebrated if you're from there versus should be celebrated as an outsider. And I don't know, it's a whole thing. It's definitely, though, the like in terms of all the cultures that I am there are very many cultures that I am not from but that I am interested in, but that's sort of top of my list, I think. And I don't 100% know why. I mean, Southern Gothic literature absolutely is probably a part of it, but
sorry, I had a thought has disappeared from my brain. But, you know, it's okay. It'll come back. Um, it had something to do with S Town, the podcast.
Oh, yeah, S Town, Southern Gothic, makes sense.
Yeah.
What did you think about S Town?
I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it in the way that I love Serial, and I didn't love it in the way that I felt like a lot of people really liked S Town.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just kind of, yeah, this was a nice story, but like, I don't know, people kind of were really hype about it, and I was just kind of like, it was pleasant.
Yeah, I definitely loved it a lot listening to it, and loved it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, was definitely shook by it in the immediate aftermath. But for whatever reason, months and months down the road, I don't find myself thinking about it the way that I do
Oh, okay.
Serial. And
okay.
it's not something that, like, you know, now that we're talking about it, I'm trying to sort of go back and put myself in the zone of how I felt and think about what I thought back then, and it's hard for me to do that. I don't know how much of that is, okay, Serial is a cultural touchstone, everyone talks about it, and so it's easy to think of Serial separate from the actual text itself. Serial takes on an outsized importance the way that, like, S-Town or Serial Season 2 or Missing Richard Simmons or any of these subsequent ones can't. And I also wonder how much of it is, like, you know, an interesting piece of art that, like, sticks with you, but comes at a time that, like, maybe is not necessarily the greatest time in the ups and downs of your life. I think either that can be, you remember it super crystal clearly because it's like, it's indicative of that time in your life, or it pulls you out of that time in your life or whatever,
Right.
or it can sort of fade from memory because it's just, oh, it's a thing that you experienced then and you're not returning to it and not thinking about it. And maybe it's also, there's something about it itself that, you know, it was good at the time, but doesn't hold the test of time. But I don't really know.
I think for me with S-Town, I mean, I enjoyed it, and I definitely, like, had that thought process of, like, yeah, this was enjoyable, but, like, I feel like the story was slightly different than I thought it was going to be. And, I mean, that was obviously intentional, like, how they build it was different than the story they told, but the new story didn't end up captivating me as much as I thought it would. And then actually, like, maybe a couple weeks after I finished listening to it, I read the memoir Hillbilly Elegy, which got like a ton of praise in the last year. I read it later than like when it was getting a ton of praise. And that story definitely that book covers a lot of the same cultural ground and like general concepts and such as S-Town, but I enjoyed the book significantly more than the podcast, and I'm not sure why. But I think reading that book made me realize, like, oh, I think this is what people got out of the podcast that I'm getting out of the book more than I did out of the podcast.
Okay. No, I think that makes sense. I haven't read the book, but I've heard the two mentioned in the same breath many times.
Yeah. It's definitely a similar writing style and very similar, or not very similar story, but like very similar location of, you know, and cultural kind of what's going on, all in the same realm.
I do appreciate, I think, one thing though, even if the specifics of the story and the specifics of it don't stick with me, I appreciate S-Town taking a different tack in how to create a radio story, as opposed to a Serial or a Missing Richard Simmons or a Radiolab piece or what have you. Of, you know, it's a note that's been overdone to death, but it is much more like a novel than a serialized radio drama or like a short form packaged radio piece. It is more meandering. It's more looping in on itself. It's, you know, the kind of thing that you can consume in one sitting or consume, you know, in bits and pieces, the way that you can sort of do both modalities with a novel, and it plays to both in different ways and in interesting ways. I don't know. And I think part of that, though, is also like, hey, I historically don't vibe as much with radio pieces as they are produced currently. I'm not that big of a This American Life listener. I'm not that big of a Radiolab listener. Sort of Serial Season 1 was an exception. And I'm not 100... other than the fact that it was just so compelling of a story, I don't necessarily know what about Serial made it click when most other things don't.
Right. And on the other hand,
like,
I was like, you know, almost exclusively This American Life NPR style
Sure.
I don't want to say almost exclusively. Maybe like 75% of my podcast listening is in the realm of that kind of audio journal
Yeah.
our style. Though it's been changing recently. I've been getting more into more like just talkative shows.
Okay.
I think it's harder for me to get into them, but it's good. Maybe I'm just listening to more McElroy products. Maybe that's what it is. But
Good goof boys. Yeah, I've always been. I'm the exact opposite in that it and it became a bit of a problem in a class that I took a year and a half ago, I guess now, where I am so much more likely to zone out and have trouble paying attention to a 15-minute, well-produced, well-edited, cut-together This American Life piece than I will a 2.5-hour-long meandering conversation that has no theme and no topic and frequently stalls for dead air and stuff like that. And I don't know why. I understand why, like, I'm more drawn to one over the other. Like, that makes sense.
Right.
What I don't understand is why it's, like, actually harder for me to pay attention and click in and listen to and get things out of on a more edited piece on a almost physical level. It bounces off me more than other things do.
Interesting. I'm trying to think if I have the opposite thing where like it's easier for me to pay attention to a story. I don't know. I feel like I'm just as likely to zone out one or the other.
I'll say, like, talking to my other friends that were in. So I took a class my senior year of college with a former Radiolab producer on making audio drama, or not audio dramas, reported narrative pieces, very much the kinds of things that you would find in a This American Life, etc. And almost every other person in class was the opposite of me. They loved that kind of stuff, and I was sort of the lone wolf of like, I love long form chat shows. I get that that's not what we're making in this class. I get that's not what we're listening to in this class. That's fine. No worries. Everyone else in the class would say the opposite, especially when like I would suggest to them, hey, you should try listening to this show. And they would try it and they were like, oh, it was fun, but I don't understand how you can pay attention for that long.
Interesting. Yeah.
How you stay interested for, this amount of time. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that. At the same time, I don't understand how you can pay attention for 3 minutes to this thing. So,
that's an interesting point. Yeah. I did find I'm going to make this connection here. I did find a new podcast recently that is very NPR-esque. However, each episode's like 10 minutes long, and they're really cute little like audio shorts. Which I don't know. I kind of like listened to all of them recently in the last week, like just because they're so short. It's called The Specialist, and it's just little like vignettes, but looking at people who do jobs that we never ever think about that are just kind of like really specialized and really interesting. And you're like, well, I guess that is a job that someone has to do, but I've never considered like, what that's actually like. My favorite one was with the woman who was the head chef at the Cincinnati Zoo. I don't remember which zoo it was, but it was like a major zoo. And it's like, yeah, obviously there needs to be someone who's like in charge of the meals and meal planning for animals, but like, it's not quite as simple as just like cutting up some food, because like each animal has different needs and you have to like balance it out and order all of this. But it was just kind of like, yeah, I haven't actually thought about the like amount of work that actually takes to plan meals for like 500 animals, right? It also contained an amazing phrase, which should be like a band name or an album name or something, which is Dead Rabbits for Frank.
Dead Rabbits for Frank. Dead Rabbits for Frank. Okay. Dead Rabbits for Frank is the name of my... it's the name... I mean, I want to say Dead Rabbits for Frank is the name of my The Pixies cover band, but I'm just thinking about that because of Frank Black. Dead Rabbits for Frank is the name of my... Oh, who would that be? It's up on Spotify.
When they first show up to talk to this woman, there's a box in the corner that is labeled Dead Rabbits or Frank, and one of the producers is like points at it, I'm guessing, and is like just like explain like what is.
Yep.
And the woman is like, oh yeah, we have this vulture who's kind of temperamental, and his name is Frank, and his favorite food is black bunnies. So that's a box for him. And they were just like,
Dead Rabbits for Frank.
yeah, alrighty.
Spotify's taking a really long time to load.
Oh. Did I tell you that I listened to, this is another change of topic.
For sure.
Did I tell you that I actually did listen to the episode Sarah Sterling is on of Mental Illness Happy Hour?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I listened to it too.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And it was, yeah, because I try to listen every week, and if I don't, then I'll, like, you know, I will listen to them all eventually.
Okay.
Even if it's not every week, then I'll do it, like, in a backlog, burning through a couple in a weekend. But yeah, I listened to it last weekend. It was good.
Yeah, it was not as, like, emotionally challenging for me to listen to as I anticipated it being.
Sure.
Though I did have a lot of revelations about my relationship with my mother.
Oh, interesting.
Which was not something that I, like, thought, you know, would be part of my listening to it, but...
Yeah. I guess context, Sarah Sterling, YouTube person, Harry Potter fandom person thing, does stuff. She's not a thing, she's a person. And involved in a really toxic and horrible and abusive relationship with another person that is a YouTube type.
That, yeah, was a big name in the
Shenanigan.
YouTube Harry Potter world.
Yep. And so went on this show, Mental Illness Happy Hour, which is all about, like, interviews with people both famous and not famous about, like, their struggles with mental health. Mental health is the way you say those words. And yeah, it was interesting that the episode primarily focused on the relationship with the mother, which I mean, one, it was fascinating and interesting, and also it's the way the conversation went. And so, like, since that's the way the conversation went, that's the way the conversation should have gone. But yeah, definitely wasn't what I was expecting. I expected to talk more about, like, the relationship with creepy shitty guy.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess at least from my perspective of, like, what Sarah said, it seems like that was a while ago, and while she's still working through it now, she's working through it in a way of, like, how does that affect my relationships with people now, instead of just focusing on, like, you know, this is a shitty thing that happened to me. But I think it's more of a diffuse type of a effect on her life now.
Yeah, and I think I don't know, I think that's a thing that's not often talked about that often, and, like, it is fascinating to think of this huge thing happened to your life, and it's very public, especially in her case. I guess very public with the caveat of, like, very public within the community in which she interacts, as is the weird challenge of any sort of micro fame.
Yeah.
But that, like, your mom doesn't know about it, and, like, that's putting a huge strain on the relationship, but putting a strain on the relationship not because it's a thing that you're both dealing with, but because it's a thing that, like, hasn't been discussed and hasn't been a part of the interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a golly, it was a fun flashback Friday a couple weeks ago when similar thing happened in the gaming fan community with Nick Robinson, other sort of beloved character of the space that turns out also did similar shitty, abusive, terrible stuff. And
yes.
How does a fan community react to that?
I don't know much about that. I mean, I know that it happened, and, like, that's about all I've got. Is just, like, I, like, saw enough headlines and, like, a little bit of stuff on Tumblr that I was like, oh, there's some shitty stuff happening. That sucks.
It was interesting that it hit me a lot harder than anything with the Harry Potter fan community that happened a couple years back, because I'm just so much more, again, not plugged into this community per se, because I never am participatory in any sort of communities. It's purely I'm consuming content that comes my way. But, like, the first time we ever tried doing this podcast, my big suggestion of, like, here's the thing that everyone should listen to is the podcast that he co-hosts. I listened to a couple other podcasts of his. I have watched a bunch of his YouTube stuff. I've been following him specifically since 2012 or so, before he was part of Polygon and part of all this stuff. And so, like, it was different than it would have been if I was much more plugged into the community. I think the way that, like, people who, you know, I never had any interactions with him, unlike in the Harry Potter version, where, like, a lot of people that I am friends with have had actual real life interactions with the shitty people that were doing terrible things. Whereas there was always that remove for me. But
I see.
it's the difference of like, I'm removed as a fan who never had contact with this person, but he's someone I'm a huge fan of, versus in Harry Potter version of all of this, where like, I'm not a fan of any of these people really on either side of the thing. It's just that like, oh, I 3 months ago, 6 months ago, became good friends with a bunch of people who are really plugged into this community.
Yes.
And I'd been trying to become fans of these people because I'm friends with you, with Hannah, with folks like that,
Right,
it's an
right,
important
right.
part of your guys' lives. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we have like the exact like flipped experiences with both situations, yeah.
for sure.
Because like in the Harry Potter community, I'd met basically all of those people on multiple occasions, and like
Yeah.
I was like probably like you could say acquaintances with them. Whereas in this go around, I'm like, that is a name of a person that I recognize, and I've like listened to like 2 of their episodes of a podcast once, you know.
Yeah, it is. Golly, it's a wild thing to come to terms with. And I do think there's an element to which, like, this is not at all to excuse any of the bad behavior, but it's like, without a doubt, this is the kind of shit that was happening in music scenes and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Since time immemorial. And it does take on a different tone now with the combination of, like, people are getting better and more progressive and like expecting more of people, so like the standards are raising in a way that's good. Communication, the level of available communication is also raising, so like there is more of a platform for the fan side to speak out and, you know, be able to assert themselves, and also then more communication for like avenues and lanes of abuse to happen. Creator fan dynamics.
Yeah, hey,
That's
we came full circle.
We did. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. And I think that I'm not going to say it's stuff like this that makes me not want to participate in fan communities, because that's not true. I'm not thinking about this in the back of my head when I'm deciding whether or not, like, the reason I don't participate in fan communities is because I don't have any drive or interest in doing it. And it's just not a mode of interaction that is something I care to do. But man, there's a dark side. There can be a dark side to all this.
I was kind of thinking about something related to that today. I was listening to the podcast Famous Adjacent, which I'm about because I feel like it is very specific to at least in a lot of realms. And I'm friends with Lauren and Claire, so...
Yeah, I'm a couple episodes behind on it, but I'll catch up.
It wasn't even like a specific thing that they said today. I think it's kind of been like a running theme throughout the show, and it wasn't like a really specific instance. It was just kind of like the one, throwaway line that made me think of it today. But like, I think it was Claire who said something like, when she was 14, 15, whatever, she really, really wanted to go to VidCon, but lived across the country, and it just didn't make sense. And her parents were like, we're not going to send you. We don't have the money to like pay for all of that to like fly you across the country to go to VidCon.
Yeah.
Which, obviously like that makes sense. And that she I don't know, she said something kind of like, now I look back and it would have been a waste of my mom's money because now I don't care and now I'm like not invested in any of that anymore. Which is totally fair and totally makes sense, but it kind of hurt me a little bit because I was like, yeah, I'm not really invested in the YouTube community in the same way that I was, and I'm not invested in a lot of the same people that I was invested in when I was going to VidCon and when that was like a big deal to me. But I don't think that's like a bad thing, and I don't think it was a waste of my time or money to have been involved in such things because like it mattered to me then and I enjoyed it then. So
Sure.
So like just because now it's not something that I would necessarily choose to spend my money on doesn't mean that it was like a bad choice to make at that point.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That like you have to honor that older or that previous version of yourself and say like,
right.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me now. It did matter to me then, and the point.
I had a good time.
You had a good time. The point of life is not, obviously you have to be reasonable and realistic about stuff. But the point is, life is not to deprive your past or current self in order to appease a future self.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just kind of a little thought that popped in my brain. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, just because past me was into whatever it was, like, I'm still going to support past me and being into that.
Sure. I know I never went to VidCon.
I mean, I definitely wouldn't have gone to VidCon if I didn't live in Los Angeles
Mhm.
during the time that VidCon was happening. I'm trying to remember. I went at least 3 years, but I
Yeah.
can't remember if I went more than that. Yeah. I definitely went to, like, VidCons 2, 3, and 4, but I think that was it.
When did VidCon start?
2012? I'm going to Google VidCon. VidCon. Also, unrelated, but I might have to go in the next, like, 15-ish minutes.
Cool.
Oh, it started in 2010. Holy bejesus.
Oh, yo.
Okay, so I definitely went 2011, 2012, 2013, but I
Mhm.
didn't go 2014. That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, because I seem to remember... Because 2013 was the year of LeakyCon, and so that was the year that I first met all y'alls. And I seem to remember hearing that VidCon was the thing y'all had went to the year before, or at least a cohort had. And then I definitely remember that year their mention of, like, VidCon being a thing. And then I know that I think at least Kirsten went to VidCon the year after, because at that point, okay, I'm getting this correctly. Yeah, that's right, because I went to LeakyCon after my freshman year. Because at that point, then I was friends with Jackie, and Kirsten and Jackie met each other either at VidCon or at LeakyCon or something like that. But they were both texting me while they were there, being like, "Hey, you know Kirsten. Kirsten's great. Hey, you know Jackie. Jackie's great." And I was like, "Yay, you're both friends." I hate that I'm many miles away from y'all now.
Yeah. Because I was thinking, like, I definitely went the second year of VidCon, and then I know I stopped going the summer after my sophomore year of college. Because that was the last summer I was in California for the summer. And so I, like, could have gone.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't know if I can get the time off of work, and I'm feeling really stressed about this, and I don't know if I want to spend the money on it, and, like, I'm only really going to see my friends who I can see anyways because they're going to be in town. And then I was like, I'm just not going to go. And then when I made that decision, I was like, wow, I feel so much less stressed. So, like, clearly that was the right decision.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't need to be stressed about making this, like, you know, work. Like, I don't need to go.
Wait, so you said you have to go in, I guess, probably now, like, 5-10 minutes, I guess, from this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Taylor Swift single.
Okay, good.
Let's
Were
go.
you
Let's get it
holding on
out.
to that one?
Let's get it out. Let's get it out.
I've only listened to it once, so I
Okay,
feel like
okay.
that's, you know.
Good, because I've listened to it, I think, 45 times.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense, obviously. It was weird.
I did have it on loop for a good half hour the first night it came out, before going to bed. So,
I would expect nothing less.
for sure.
I don't know. I don't remember how you phrased it, but you said the perfect thing about it that was like, it's going to be both weirder and more normal and, like, more boring than you expect it to be.
Yeah, no, because here's the thing. It is both a bad song, a perfectly fine song, and a little bit of a good song.
Yes. It's like so many things all at once that you figure out what to even say about it.
Yeah, and so one, I think there are people that are saying it's just bad. Sure, I can vibe with y'all saying that. There are people saying it's great. Okay, you might need to, like, listen to more music if you think this is a great song. I do think, though, the people that think it's bad are the people that don't have any sort of appreciation for when Taylor Swift gets, like, weird and does corny, stupid things. I am on the record of loving corny Taylor Swift. I love weird Taylor Swift. A great Taylor Swift song is better than a weird Taylor Swift song, but a weird Taylor Swift song is better than a boring song. And this sort of straddles that line between weird and boring. It's mostly just sort of boring, fine, bland, whatever, trying to be edgy, pop-ish song. And then she does the phone thing, which is just fucking crazy and so over the top and so hot topic, and I love it. And that's what makes it, mostly a boring song, but also have these little flashes of just
Yeah.
bananas shenanigans.
That's true. You're like, okay, this is like a song, this is like,
Yeah.
and then that happens, and you're like, okay, this is happening. What's happening? This got weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very curious because all right, Shake It Off came out in August of 2014. If you listen to Shake It Off and you listen to the rest of 1989, under no circumstances does Shake It Off sounds like it belongs on that album. It is
Belongs on
complete and
the
total
album.
outlier sonically, tonally, thematically. Makes no sense. But so then that has me wondering, is this going to be like, the first Taylor Swift album where the lead single is Teardrops on My Guitar, and like, is there a better example of what the first Taylor Swift album sounds like than Teardrops on My Guitar? No. Or is it going to be like 1989 where it has nothing to do with the rest of the album and the rest of the album is actually good? Who knows? Who can say?
Yeah.
I'm holding out.
I think, at least because I feel like the song was kind of all over the place in terms of like what it was trying to do and what its interests were, that I feel like it makes sense that the album might be a little bit all over the place, because I feel like she might have just a lot of different genres or different things that are interesting to her to do. So I feel like there might just be a lot of different stuff on the songs.
Sure.
I am by no means an expert on what Taylor Swift might do on her newest album, but having never listened to a full Taylor Swift album.
Oh, you got to listen to Red. You got to listen to Red start to finish. Red is the best. Red is the best. It took me 4 years to come to the realization that Red is the best Taylor Swift album.
I'll do it.
Maybe one of the best pop albums. 1989 is more immediately accessible than Red. I will grant that. And so there's a reason why it took me 2 years for 1989 to sort of wean out of my system and Red to take its rightful throne. Red is so good. I think the key question with regards to the album is this song, Look What You Made Me Do, is this a plot point in a larger narrative that will span throughout the album? Is this going to be like Lord's melodrama, where if you plucked out an individual song, you wouldn't necessarily know, is this the song where she's really mad and being a brat about things? Or is this the song where she comes to a big realization about learning lessons and stuff like that? Or is the whole album going to be full of this sort of bratty silliness?
Yeah.
In which case, I'm fine with either, provided that the songs are better. Like, Taylor can be bratty and write a really good song, then like, I'm down. Fine. Be problematic and but like, let me be able to dance to it. Dead Rabbits for Frank is not the name of my Taylor Swift cover band.
That is reasonable, but that would be funny.
That'd be good.
That'd be good.
My dream in life, among many, is for Hannah and I to live in the same city so that we can start a band that does exclusively pop punk covers of Kesha songs.
That's everything I've ever wanted in my entire life. I would like to also live in this city that you two live in, so I can just, hang out with you.
Does this count as subtweeting if it's through a podcast, Hannah?
Podcasting.
I guess it's not subtweeting because I'm
Hannah.
actually saying your name. So
That's
cool.
true. Well, what is it? What is like a podcast subtweet? What is that?
I don't know.
Has that ever happened? Definitely, that has to have happened.
Definitely has happened, especially if you think about the fact that, like, in the rabbit holes of the internet, some interesting podcasts hosted by teens that are just like. Have you ever seen or read the play Speech and Debate?
No.
Okay, it's a very good play, and one of the key plot points is one of the main characters does a video blog that's just them delivered to camera. But I'm sure that there are like those kinds of things that exist on the internet that are full of subtweeting the various Beckys of their school.
Definitely.
I'm interested. I want there to be more experimentation with the form of podcast. And I'm sure there is a lot of it happening, but happening below the surface that we don't see. But yeah, give me the bad audio diaries from teenagers. Give me the collab podcasts where each person swaps off a different day. Give me the I'm just going to record what my bus route sounds like every day. Give me all that weird shit. I thrive on it. There's I don't know if it's a website or if it's a Chrome extension or something like that, where it will link you only to YouTube videos that have 0 views.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah.
And so you can be the first and maybe only person to ever watch this weird random video. I need to find that. I don't know. I like that internet esoterica.
Yeah. This. Okay, I think I might have just found something like that, but I'm not positive.
I found a Gizmodo article that's called The Sad, Weird World of Unseen YouTube Videos, which seems, given how much I read Gizmodo, seems to me like maybe this is where I found it originally a few years back. I did find a page that is YouTube videos with less than 100 views, so that's something.
Okay.
At least.
That is also interesting. Definitely. The video I found was a little bit concerning, is what I might.
Oh.
It was this
I
woman
guess that is a risk.
spinning around in a circle with words in not English, but the whole thing is like tinted red in this way that is just like unpleasant, and it's definitely possible that she's like pole dancing, but like also no, she's hula hooping. This video is it's a totally fine video. It's just that it's like tinted red, so you're kind of like, what's happening? Why is it so red? Mostly, I think that's what it is.
Do you know about number stations?
No.
So number stations are a thing that I was just sort of thinking about, like, you know, esoterica and sort of weird, sort of unsettling things that are on the internet. This is not an internet thing. This is a real life thing where these radio stations that just broadcast series of numbers, just spelled out bit by bit. And I don't 100% know. They're prominent in Eastern Europe, I believe, and I think let me Google. But I think the thought behind them is that they're broadcasting out codes or broadcasting out ciphers that for how to break codes and things like that for spies that are in foreign countries.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I've pulled up the Wikipedia page.
Okay. First known use of number stations was during World War I. The numbers were transmitted in Morse code. Number stations operated mainly during the Cold War, yet many continue to operate and some have even switched operators. So that's the thing that's cool and weird about them, is that, like, there's no reason for them to still exist, but they do. And there are some that are just sort of out there continuing to broadcast.
Yeah, this looks like a very good Wikipedia rabbit hole to go
Absolutely.
down. My one true love, Wikipedia rabbit holes.
Do you ever play, do wiki races?
Yes. I haven't actually done that. I've done it like once, but I really like the idea of wiki races, and I've watched like YouTube videos or like the Gregory Brothers have done wiki races.
It was a thing among my circle of friends in high school because a lot of us would did drama, and so we would do plays and would hang out after school and have a gap between when, cross-country practice ended and when play practice started, or just when school ended and when play practice started, and before we had cars and would, like, drive and stuff like that. We'd just be hanging out in the library, and there was a good period in, I think, sophomore year of a couple months where that was the go-to activity, is we get in a room and then just wiki race.
That's delightful. I would like to convince my friends to get into that with me.
Oh, I guess I should say a wiki race is you start on one page and you have to get from one page to another only clicking through the blue links on Wikipedia. The one thing that was the thing that ended up being the most fun about it is because I would do this with my friends most every day for like a couple months. They're relatively 6 months or so after that, I found a website that sort of does it automatically, and like it's you against other strangers, and I realized that like reliably I would be either first or second every time, because I was like, I've actually honed the skill of how to navigate Wikipedia in this one very specific and very unuseful in the broader world way. Yeah, we had to. There was some versions. Sometimes we would play with no Control F, so you couldn't search on the page. You had to actually like scroll through. Sometimes we would play with no United States, because it turns out if you can get to the United States page, that's a really good like way to link out to a whole bunch of other stuff. So that ended up being a pro strat of, you want to
just
get
find
from
the U.S. and like.
Yeah, and if you can get to countries, those are pretty good, especially if you're trying to do something like relatively broad. You can probably get there through countries. You can get there through history things. You can get there through.
Yeah, I think I found this wiki game. I'm gonna investigate this later. Probably get into it, a day or two.
Okay, the current wiki game is getting from the TV show Oz to Frankenstein. It's fun, man. Let's see how much time
really cool.
is on this one.
I'm going to investigate this.
Oh, okay, a new game started. Lean manufacturing to South Africa under apartheid. All right, let's do it. Lean manufacturing. All right, what do we got here? South Africa under apartheid, the way to wealth. Do we have anyone that's British? Let's see. Let's try that. Or England for itself. England, no. Did I see Ben Franklin somewhere? Ben Franklin. Okay, Ben Franklin can get us to England. England can get us to South Africa. Maybe England can even just get us to South Africa under apartheid, frankly. All right, Parliament of Great Britain. We'll just go somewhere quickly. Kingdom of Great Britain. United Kingdom. Cool. All right, South Africa. Come on, Control F. Let's do it. South Africa. South Africa. But there's no link here. Okay. There we go. South Africa. Apartheid. Oh, that's apartheid. Where's South Africa under apartheid? Oh, South African generation. All right. South Africa under the Dutch Empire. Nope. South Africa under apartheid. Oh. How do we... Oh, so we're on apartheid, and we were just on South Africa. How do we get to the South Africa under apartheid page? I don't know. Okay, it expired.
No.
Dang. See, that's what happens. You can get stuck sometimes.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I'm gonna say goodbye and maybe play like 2 other video games and then throw together my ingredients for dumplings.
Heck yeah.
Alrighty. Let's actually talk soon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
See ya.